The great Nobel Prize laureate Carl Friedrich Georg Spitteler said, "Halt silent, my dear, and take me with you. The evening is night, and the summit is remote. I will play Firkers what a ditty like." The great Nobel Prize laureate Knut Pedersen Hamsun said, "A broken bar I will exile my thoughts if they think of you again, and I will rip my lips out if they say your name once more. Now if you do exist, I will tell you my final word in life or in death. I tell you goodbye." The great Nobel Prize laureate Władysław Stanislaw Remont said, "I dreamed of great actions, of voyages or rovings across the oceans of a free and independent life." The great Nobel Prize laureate George Bernard Shaw said, "If you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you." The great Nobel Prize laureate Henri Bergson said, "To exist is to change is to mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly." The great Nobel Prize laureate Sigrid Undset said, "All my days I have longed equally to travel the right road and to take my own errant path." The great Nobel Prize laureate John Galsworthy said, "Love is not a hothouse flower, but a wild plant, born of a wet night, born of an hour of sunshine, sprung from wild seed, blown along the road by a wild wind. A wild plant that, when it blooms by chance within the hedge of our gardens, we call a flower, and when it blooms outside we call a weed, but flower or weed, whose scent and color are always wild." The great Nobel Prize laureate Luigi Pirandello said, "Life is full of strange absurdities, which, strangely enough, do not even need to appear plausible, since they are true." The great Nobel Prize laureate Roger Martin Dugard said, "I always have a pad of paper and a pencil within reach, to catch on the wing this turn of phrase which strikes me as felicitous, that idea which I hope to be able to examine more closely in the light of day." The great Nobel Prize laureate Pearl Buck said, "Love cannot be forced, love cannot be coaxed and teased, it comes out of heaven, unasked and unsought." The great Nobel Prize laureate Johannes Wilhelm Jensen said, "During half a century of literary work, I have endeavored to introduce the philosophy of evolution into the sphere of literature, and to inspire my readers to think in evolutionary terms." The great Nobel Prize laureate André Gide copyright Paul Guillaume Gide said, "It is better to be hated for what you are than to be loved for what you are not." The great Nobel Prize laureate Thomas Stearns Eliot said, "For last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another voice." The great Nobel Prize laureate William Faulkner said, "Read, read, read, read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it, just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read, you'll absorb it, then write. If it's good, you'll find out. If it's not, throw it out of the window." The great Nobel Prize laureate, Earl Bertrand Arthur William Russell said, "Fear is the main source of superstition, and one of the main sources of cruelty. To conquer fear is the beginning of wisdom." The great Nobel Prize laureate P.A. Currency R. Fabian Lagerkvist said, "Bitter, too, to be forced to acknowledge in one's heart how little love has to do with kindness." The great Nobel Prize laureate Juan Ramon copyright Nez said, "To live is nothing more than to come here to die, to be what we were before being born, but with apprenticeship, experience, knowledge of cause, and perhaps with will." Great Nobel Prize laureate Henrik Pontoppidan said, "This thought has been ascribed to Voltaire: if God did not exist, mankind would have invented him. I find more truth in the reverse. If there really is a God, then we should seek to forget him, to raise up men who will to do good for goodness' sake, not out of fear of punishment for their bad deeds." How can someone give alms to a poor man with a clean heart when he believes, and has an interest in believing, that there is a God who keeps score in heaven, who looks down and nods in approval?